Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage this year's conference chair, Dilda Kama.
Welcome, everybody. So welcome to our final lunch panel for this year's ITGA City and University Relations Conference. Now, please join me in welcoming back Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin and our wonderful panelists for this afternoon.
Well, happy Friday, everyone. How has the conference been? Yes, I had the opportunity to join you guys a couple of days ago for the kickoff, and I could sense the excitement in the room. Hopefully we've had good collaborative conversations about how each and every one of our institutions and our communities can learn and work together. And that really is the premise of the conversation today. And so, again, I'm Council President Shannon Hardin from here in Columbus, and I'm excited to moderate what I think will be a tremendously important conversation about partnerships, collaborations, and how a region can work together. At the heart of this conversation is the Smart Cities Grant. And for those who don't know, in 2016, Columbus was able to beat out more than 70 other cities to win the Smart Cities Challenge. But what truly set Columbus apart was our ability to put forward a comprehensive proposal that brought together leaders from across the community. Along with bragging rights, the Smart City Challenge awarded Columbus a total of $50 million. So we now have the pleasure of working with the federal, state, and local partners in this endeavor. So today in this conversation, we'll use the Smart Columbus enterprise as a case study for community collaboration, examining both the successes and, yes, some of our missteps. For this conversation, I'm joined by a great group of panelists. We have to my left, Ms. Joanna Pinkerton, President and CEO of the Central Ohio Transit Agency. A little fun fact about Joanna, she was booked for this panel before she has her current job. She was the head of the Transportation Research Center here at OSU. She's now 4 weeks into her new position as the head of CODA, and she is doing an excellent job. Ms. Joanna Pinkerton. Next, we have Mike Stevens. Mike is the head of the city's Smart Columbus team and oversees all efforts related to the U.S. Department of Transportation grant. Mr. Mike Stevens. Ms. Erica Clark-Jones is the head of our Celebrate One. Celebrate One is a local organization addressing one of the most significant factors that contribute to Columbus's high infant mortality rate. Celebrate One and Smart Columbus are working together in some really interesting ways to tackle this issue. Please help me welcome Ms. Erica Clark-Jones. Ms. Courtney Filato. Ms. Courtney is the Smart Cities Relationship Director at OSU. Her focus is to help facilitate the Ohio State University's role as the lead research partner in this effort. Welcome, Ms. Courtney. And finally, my friend Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis is the Director of Smart Columbus at the Columbus Partnership. Jordan helped spearhead the strategy and collaboration for the joint public-private venture, particularly focused on vehicle electrification. Ms. Jordan Davis. So as we get started, I'm going to ask a series of questions, and then there will be time at the end for crowd participation. Like all conversations, we've all been at conferences. We want this to be casual. We're going to have a conversation, everyone on this stage. If we aren't able to collaborate on this stage, then we don't have a good story to tell. Because this conversation is about collaboration. It's about partnership and how in Columbus we work together. And so with that, I'm going to ask Jordan or Mike, or actually, I'm going to start with Joanna. Because again, going back to Joanna's diverse background in this space, tell us, how did we get here? How do all the partners come together? How did we get such a strong application put together with Columbus Partners?
Well, thank you. Thank you, President Hardin. for lobbing the question to me. Jordan and Mike, I'll field this one and fill it in if you'd like to add to that. So it has been a 2-year journey. And at the time I was with the Ohio State University and had the opportunity to help write the initial grant. And you've probably heard this since you've been in Columbus for some time, but we call it the Columbus Way. And I just spoke at another panel about an hour ago, and I mentioned that we're a really great, big, small town. I mean, we treat each other like a small city. We do know each other. We rely on the fact that we have such significant institutions, the sheer size of the Ohio State University, the size of our major government operations like the city and the county. You're talking about concentrations of people who are invested. So we have to work together. But we're very blessed with our corporate community. There is not a single segment that is more than 20% of our economy. So we're very stable with finance, manufacturing, technology, R&D. And so we reached out to those entities like Battelle, who helped us write the proposal, to the medical community who identified issues that are affecting our very prosperous city with some unique issues. And really, I have to give kudos to the business community who I think almost overwhelmed us at first. And I bet you could speak to that a little bit after the fact, Jordan and Mike, but our corporate community said, oh, wait a minute. Government gets this. You guys are thinking about data and intelligence and technology integration into your everyday systems. Other communities or corporations have had to do that just to stay in business. They've had to learn how to be nimble and adapt to disruptions in their market. And for government to say we will elevate the level of service to citizens through innovations in our delivery of service, the corporate community was a resounding, we want a way to coordinate with you. So we did, in the very early stages, bring some of those corporate partners to the table. We actually let them help write some components of the proposal. And I think it was just the willingness to listen and learn that really helped us.
Jordan, you were at that first pitch, I remember, when you guys went to DC. And I remember the mayor, and in Columbus, we were really excited about this. They did such a good job of educating the community that this was something big. This was a big opportunity. So we were all back home, like on our iPads watching. Tell us about that, because I think when you got back, you told me about how impressed they were with that we had the mayor there, and when the mayor would stop talking, seamlessly, a representative from the business community would jump in, and seamlessly, someone from another industry would jump in.
So what was really unique about the Smart City Challenge is it was extremely high profile. So many of you are probably used to applying for grants. They're not really sexy. They probably happen all the time. This one was of a different DNA. It was a national challenge. There was one winner. The final pitches required every mayor of the final 7 cities to get up on stage in a live streamed format to pitch to the U.S. Secretary of Transportation and his whole senior team. And we had to have a video component. We practiced it. We wrote the script. It was an amazing performance. And we actually, initially they said, well, it doesn't have to be the mayor, you can bring other people. And so we had Dr. Drake, the president of the university, and Alex Fisher, the CEO of the Columbus Partnership, who serves as a proxy for the business community in Columbus, all teed up to have this like amazing orchestration. And they're like, well, no other city can do that, so we can't have you do that. So what's interesting is when San Francisco had actually raised more money to complement the grant than we had. I think Joanna was alluding to the private sector commitment. We had actually put $90 million worth of investment on the table to respond to the 50 that the U.S. Department of Transportation and Vulcan were willing to give to the winning city. But that was representative of 22 different organizations. San Francisco, who had 120, was only representative of 2. And the 22 organizations, along with the letters of support that came from every single state legislator's office to over 110 different local organizations that we petitioned to support us, was a demonstration that we were all in on this together, that this Smart Columbus opportunity was a platform we've been waiting for, a platform to show what Columbus can do to the on an international stage. We are smart, we are open, We have an amazing private sector. We have a really strong public sector. And we can solve our transportation issues together through technology and through a fierce commitment to collaboration. And I think that's really, it came through in how we performed, but more importantly, it came through based off of the commitments that we had leading up to it. I'm really proud to say that that $90 million has now grown to over $510 million of aligned investment towards this effort. And that is a testament to how committed this region is to really becoming a leader in this space and to really transforming together.
Thank you. So I really enjoyed our pitch, and obviously we won. But I still remember Pittsburgh's video.
Oh, yeah.
And Pittsburgh's video, I stole their end tag. It said, if it's not for all, it's not for us. And I love that as a part of the conversation about building us smart cities. And so, you know, with that, I want to look towards Erica. The mayor has put out, the city of Columbus has our region and our state has one of the largest infant mortality rates. And as we are trying to tackle an issue and find the opportunities about how technology can improve the lives of our residents, we realize that one of our top priorities, one of our top issues is high infant mortality rate. So Erica, how have you found integrating that mission, that goal, into this larger initiative around technology? How is that partnership working? What does it look like? How do we articulate that?
Thank you, Council President Hardin, and thanks for having me here on the panel. I'm honored to lead our work in reducing infant mortality here in Franklin County. Our mayor, Andrew Ginther, was all in, and I think that's key. Leadership starts at the top, and we've been able to leverage his interest in changing the quality of life for all residents in Columbus and Franklin County to be able to be present, for example, on this project and several others. So if any of you attended our session this morning, infant mortality is used as a global metric to indicate the quality of life. And we have localized it down to the census tract in Columbus and Franklin County. And for some of our communities, including the Linden community, where we are working on a pilot project with Smart Columbus, infant mortality rates are almost 3 times that of the rates in Franklin County as a whole. And Franklin County is higher than our national goal of 6 deaths per 1,000 live births in the country. So with that, you have to say, when you're looking at a neighborhood, you say, what are the things that will improve the quality of life? And there are 4 social determinants of health that we're keenly focused on. One is housing, one is education, one is employment, and the other is transportation. And we did not pass up the opportunity to be a part of something very significant with how to improve the quality of life for the residents in Linden, specifically pregnant mothers on Medicaid and their transportation challenges to and from prenatal and postpartum and well baby care appointments. What we learned was that when a mom uses Medicaid transportation assistance, and we learned this from very smart people at Alphabet and Google and Sidewalk Labs, we would get moms to the appointments most of the time, but we had a terrible time getting them back home. So you'd have mothers and with newborns, either they were postpartum or they were pregnant, waiting 3 to 4 hours for a ride back home. So what does that do when we say you need to go to 12 prenatal care appointments? After the second or third one, you're not interested. And so we were honored that Smart Columbus said, we want to make this a part of the project. What we learn, we can scale to several communities across this county and, of course, across the state, where we have high infant mortality rates, and then, of course, be a lesson to the nation.
Mike, how was that, pulling that type of a component into a more technical project?
It was easy because it was the right thing to do. It's what Erica just described is really what the so what of what smart cities and smart Columbus is. There's a lot of definitions to smart cities. We're looking at it from the city of Columbus and Mayor Ginther. The perspective is, how are we providing equitable access to opportunity through mobility for our residents? Absolutely. And this is probably one of the most important ways. So we're trying to support Celebrate One in their efforts to reduce the infant mortality and be a component of that. So when we went to USDOT and said we want to modify our portfolio, and here's a specific project we want to focus on, and because we want to solve the problem of reliable, flexible transportation for expectant mothers, they had no problem with that because they saw that, okay, so that's the so what of what we're trying to accomplish through this research project.
Is that replicable? So if we identify another community issue in the future post, say, the grant period, is there something replicable in this relationship?
Definitely. I look a lot around workforce opportunities and job training and getting to job centers and mobility and making sure we're working with partners like CODA to provide those mobility solutions to get people to those opportunities that exist. I think it's replicable across many different aspects.
Would you mind if I add
Please.
to that? I agree with Mike that it's replicable, and as I look at my friends here on the stage, I'm really proud to be the engineer, the nerd that's been in infrastructure and transportation for 20 years now. And the reason I'm excited about that is this is the first time I have seen policymakers, engineers, people who have been building a very robust, sound, safe transportation system, meaning highways, in our nation actually acknowledge that mobility is a factor in our quality of life. And having worked at the DOT, having worked at local government level, I can assure you that we didn't always ask the so what or the why. We just made sure that it was engineered perfectly. But we didn't think about what we were engineering it for.
Right.
And so now you're seeing a fundamental shift in people realizing that it is time to reconnect neighborhoods that were severed by interstates and to use our systems in a more sustainable way and actually optimize them. We've got really great assets and we can optimize them with data and technology. So you can take any challenge and say, what assets do we have and how can we apply them? But it did take a fundamental shift in leadership at the U.S. Department of Transportation. And I'd like to think that one of the legacies of the smart city concept is it's forcing all of us who work in government service to think about why we're doing what we're doing instead of just making sure that we're doing it very well.
So Columbus is the capital of the state of Ohio. The city government is here with our 9,000 employees. The state offices are here with their thousands of employees. And then you have Ohio State University with their many thousands of employees.
40,000.
47.
How many?
40,000.
47. Wow.
Largest employer.
So I can say this. So Ohio State has a bigger bureaucracy than the city, even the city of Columbus. Courtney, how do you manage that? How do you bring that to the table and make sure that all the beautiful assets that Ohio State has at their fingertips are boiled down and brought to an initiative like this?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on the panel today, President Hardin. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better.
So, Ohio State University, where you guys are at, 110,000 people are walking across campus on any given day when classes are in session. So we really do see ourselves as a city within the city. The university was the primary research partner for the US DOT grant, as Joanna said a couple years ago. And over the last 2 years, we've had various levels of success with faculty, staff, and students engaging in this work. The reality was we really had no, I would say, strategic plan in our engagement, purposely focused plan on how we engage, until probably the last 3-4 months. And Mike can talk about this more in a minute. So we at the university are doing 3 things when it comes to our smart cities engagement moving forward. First off, we are helping the city with grant implementation. So they have 2.5 years left on the USDOT grant. So we have to figure out how to plug in our faculty, staff, and students in the actual implementation of the 9 projects. Second, as the university partner in this work, we're here to help the city think beyond the grant. So they are focused on KPIs and deliverables for USDOT. The reality is we did smart cities before the grant and we'll do it after. And our job is to be that bigger thought partner and thinker, even outside of just smart mobility. You know, we have a lot of work going on in the university around energy and sustainability, around health, so all these other smart pillars and areas that have a lot of overlap and connection.
Our third way of engaging, and this is, again, the large bureaucracy, how do we bring everyone to the table, is to moving forward thinking of the university as a living laboratory for smart cities, thinking of ourselves as a smart campus. So how do we do that? We do that by engaging leadership across the university. We do it by engaging not just faculty, but staff, students in a conversation around what is smart at Ohio State, what are the assets, what are we really good at, how does the grant align to this work, and what are our ambitions or goal for this work moving forward. So a very large organization, sure, but so rich with assets in this area. The trick and the challenge and our charge is to really understand it and bring it all together in a more cohesive way. So we are just starting and beginning that journey.
Have there been stepping on toes? Have there been those turf issues yet? And this could go to anyone, really. They're not here, so we can say.
Raise your hand if you work for the university. No. So I think like with any large challenge, charge topic like this, there are people with varying viewpoints. So for example, how do you define smart cities? What is a smart city? That itself is a loaded term that, depending on who you're talking to, what their research is, will determine how they look at it. I had a faculty member in the College of Engineering early on in this role tell me that she was frustrated, College of Engineering, and she said, you hear a lot about the smart and not enough about the city. So when you talk about smart cities, you hear a lot about the technology, the autonomous shuttles, the vehicles, but what about the people? What about, to Joanna's point earlier, the why? I mean, let's solve a problem with it, not just deploy technology for deployment's sake. So, there is, I'm not going to say turf wars. I would say we have some norming and storming we are doing to create a common language and vocabulary here at the university. And not just a common language and vocabulary, but a common goal. Right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we are all maybe speaking a little bit of a different language, but we are talking about leveraging technology and data to better the quality of life, right? So if we can all just kind of keep our turn north together in the same direction and focus on that, I think we'll get there.
And with regards to turf wars, we didn't start collaborating just with this grant. We really have been working together as a community with the private sector, the public sector, the academic sector before that. If anything's of significance that got accomplished in this city, it was because we worked together. So we have a foundation based on trust. We all have individual personalities. We all have organizations that have varying priorities at times, but we're able to work through that. And I think our relationships have gotten better and the collaboration continues to get stronger. So I'm encouraged, so beyond the grant, we're going to have an even bigger tent of public and private and academic collaboration to solve issues for this community going forward.
And if I could just jump in on that, just to extend that relationship, we were able, Celebrate One, I think Smart Columbus was able to leverage our relationship with community members, right? So that we are grounding it in solving real problems for real people. And I think that's also very helpful, and that's the way we do business in Columbus.
And that's key, because USDOT keeps telling us you need to go and talk to the end user. You need to understand what the problem is. Don't give us a solution in search of a problem. Identify the need, identify the problem, and then work for a solution on that.
And I was chuckling, a lot of people were chuckling. I think I made a face, maybe about the turf war. And
You didn't stick your tongue out at me, did you?
No. And it wasn't directed at Mike, but I think Courtney positioned it very well about the norming and storming. It wasn't so much turf war as it was the volume of interest. Everybody wanted in, and everyone had an idea. And quite frankly, there was no system that exists of how you vet that, how you figure out what is the priority. And what a wonderful thing, right, to have that groundswell of support. And so it took a while to adjust. And so it wasn't so much turf as it was, we have so many resources here, and then figuring out which ones work. And I think if anything, and we are talking specifically about, a $50 million grant, but that's something that has to be done. But it has been a shift in our way of thinking that we will tap into every one of those resources, even outside of the grant, and make them part of our permanent systems and operations here in Columbus. So a great a great support from the community, but boy, it was like
overwhelming.
We just got inundated.
Yeah, I
And it
would
was
say there's
wonderful.
something a little different. We've talked about it, but we maybe haven't been so literal about it. This isn't just a few handshake agreements and we do some meetings once a week. We've actually operationalized our collaboration in a very physical sense, in the sense that we're co-located together. So the Columbus Partnership Management Team, the City of Columbus Smart Cities Management Team, Courtney, we have a gentleman from American Electric Power. We actually all work in one space, open floor plan with no offices or walls, or which is really inviting to a lot of transparency and openness and collaboration. I think that's really important because this isn't something you can have a transactional relationship with. It really has to be something where our nomenclature becomes the same, our daily routines become the same, our bond and our trust in the different people within our team is so close that we can solve problems in real time and iterate together. It's so absolutely critical. And that's something that I don't think any of us thought we would be doing when we won the grant. But as this project grew to something much bigger than a grant, and really thinking about the grant as a seed, we knew that this type of relationship was essential, and it's been very game-changing to how we work.
So to make this even more applicable to the communities that our folks are representing, so we all know each other. We knew each other before the grant. We talked about this Columbus way of collaboration. So that part was actually the easy part. By winning the grant, didn't we get another partner in the federal government? How has that added to the equation? And have we been able to incorporate them into our Columbus way of partnership to produce a good product? And that's for anybody who...
We actually have two funders, I would say. So
good point.
We also have Paul G. Allen, Family Foundations Paulins, the co-founder of Microsoft. It's philanthropic money as well as federal money. So I think that's important to know that when we won, we didn't just win. There were two misunderstandings, I think, on the surface when we won. One was that we won a trophy. Oh, great, we won. We're the U.S. Smart City. That's amazing. Yeah, no. We won a job. We have a lot of work to do. This is a lot of responsibility. The second one was we won one grant with one coordinated timeline and one coordinated set of deliverables. That's also false. We have two funders with two very different portfolios of work on two different timelines. One is 4 to 5 years, one's 3 years, with two very different reporting structures. So there are two different players at place, which has made it even harder to manage those expectations and that dynamic.
And to build on that, the two partners were brought together as part of the challenge.
Right.
After the decision was made and we won, and then the administration changed over, the partners kind of diverged. The grant funders kind of diverged on their priorities. To answer your question on having USDOT as a partner, there's been challenges with that, and for a couple reasons. One, the way their funding usually cascades down, it goes through a State Department of Transportation as opposed to working directly with a municipality. The other challenge is we had a change in administration. We had champions in the Secretary's office in the previous administration, and with the changeover, those champions left, and we've been working to engage new champions and work with the career staff on implementing the grant, but also build those relationships we need. Fortunately for us, we have a really strong congressional delegation on both sides of the aisle that has engaged with the Secretary's office and supports what we're trying to do for Smart Columbus. So I think that has been really helpful. But the level of partnership isn't as strong as the collaboration we experience at the local level because we haven't had the years of experience and trust build up.
Yeah. Is there a way to evaluate partnerships? Is there a way to really look and articulate really how we say it, but how do we know it, that partnerships are working?
I'm working on a model right now. It's not perfect. But if you think about a matrix of sorts and you were to think about vision and execution as two ways of evaluation, and you think about if we're shared or we're executing individually. So if we have a shared vision and we have shared execution, I think we really start to get to this transformational, trusted partner, right, that we want to work with, because we both want to go to the same place and we're executing in coordination together. Oftentimes we function in transactional relationships where there's one person that has a vision, but they're different, right? Like the one partner has the vision, the other is just the executor. So you're hired to be the executor of somebody else's vision. And so your skin's not in the game. And that's just a transactional, and sure, P3s do function that way, but that's really not where we're gonna get the long-term relationships where we're gonna create innovation around the edge and we're gonna get more out of it. And I think there's some variations where we can have a shared vision, but we're just stakeholders in that relationship. There's just one person executing and we all have that shared vision. I think what we're executing in Columbus is around that transformational partnerships in which we are creating roles and we're executing on this journey together, but we all are coming together as one team under one vision for where we want to go. And I think that's the ultimate state, and that is not something that tomorrow we walk into the office and we go, oh, we've arrived. That is not, I don't think, a reality, but I think it comes to life in small wins, and I think that oftentimes we're realized when in the smallest of ways, whether it's in a community setting like this, when you realize we've come to a point where we're really at a transformational stage in this community, or it's around a meeting on a Monday morning where we realize we're all connecting and coordinated. But there's little moments like that, but I think that's the ultimate point we want to arrive to.
You referenced earlier stealing Pittsburgh line about equity for all. And so I think one early quantifiable measure is who's at the table. We had a brief discussion about this in the panel I was in just prior to this. It's painful, but everyone has to be at the table. So you're talking about the people who generate our power in this community, we're at the table, the people who distribute it, the R&D, even if it's a bureaucracy or if it's difficult to work with, the R&D has to be at the table. The corporate community who usually helps on the philanthropic side had to be at the table. The city and the county, and then down to the molecular level, neighborhood leaders, pastors in the communities who know their neighborhood better than maybe even a council representative might. So you have to start there. I think that's very quantifiable. If you are not inviting a certain element to the table, then you will get to a point where it won't work, even though that's hard at first to get all those different people together.
And to maybe add on, Joanna,
Please.
Real quick. So
We can't.
the complexity. My mic isn't working. Hold on one second.
Can you hear me?
There
So
we
the
go.
complexity of the partnerships is also something to not undervalue. So we have a big city government, we have a big university, we have so many partnerships from the faculty, staff, city level already outside of smart cities. So as you're bringing everybody to the table and you're measuring partnership, it's very fluid, it's very complex, and it's not a person. It's people. It's an army that understands who they are and what their role is, and they respect that, and they respect the role of others. So partnership itself is a really complex component of this. It's one of the most powerful, or I would say the most powerful component of the smart cities work that we have in this town. But not to undervalue, large organizations coming together is more than just a person at each organization. It's a tribe at each organization.
So we talked a lot about our successes in the partnership, and we kind of got on the turf issue a little bit, but have there been just outright missteps along the way where that maybe called for a course correction in an organization, a ship as big as Smart Cities? How do you do a course correction with everybody, or be nimble enough where one part of the initiative needs to do a course correction? Or do we not need to do any course corrections?
Can I start?
Yeah.
We did have to do some course corrections because, the vision was great. The execution, we didn't put as much thought in the implementation side of that. From a city perspective, we put, you have to have the right people in the right role. And that evolved over time. Working with USDOT, and that relationship evolved. And what we did about a little over a year into it, we looked at the portfolio of projects, and we realized there were some things that we just didn't need to do to really advance what we wanted to do to have an impact on our community. So we looked at our portfolio, we reworked the portfolio, we added the Transportation for Expectant Mother project into it. We really put a keen focus on our Smart Columbus operating system. And the other thing that we struggled with, and Joanna touched on it earlier, is there was so much coming at us about we want to be involved, how do we engage? I think we all kind of looked at it like, and that was how I responded.
That was the polite version, yeah.
But and especially from the university, it was so exciting for the level of interest and the desired engagement from the university. But we frustrated our partners at the university on the program management side because we weren't really responding and didn't have a process set up to how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And Courtney's been in this now, is your 6th month? Yeah. The process that she has put up in the governance and bringing together the leaders from across the university has made a significant difference. And that you can't be lost. Anytime you move forward on something like this, you've got to think about the process and how to engage in doing that. So I'm not going to just continue to talk. I'll just go, But I think those are some of the learnings, or the challenges we face and what we learned and how we adapted.
And thank you for that, Mike. To chime in from the university side, so I'm 6 months in, and I think the university realized very quickly after 2 years of quote-unquote participating that it was a full-time job of someone to manage this relationship. And so I am based in the corporate engagement office here in the university. That's where Smart Cities is now living. And my full-time job is to bridge and to make sure that the university is fulfilling our role with the city. And that is, in our large city within the city, no small task. So this is also, having the partners around the table really put their money where their mouth is. And if they really want to do this and they want it to be a success, create the organizational structure and capacity to do that.
I asked this question the other night at a different panel, but smart city related panel. What does year 5 of this partnership, or year 6 of this partnership look like once we are not bound together by the grant and by the outside relationship? What does that look like when we are all kind of freed, but still with the Columbus way? Are we doing things now that bind and build us together that will keep this thing moving like this post the grant? That's right. That's for actually everybody.
I mean, my bigger question is, does it need to look like this? I don't know yet. We don't know those answers. Does it need to be an NGO? Does it need to be only in the city? Does it need to be, or is it come to life in all of our organizations as something we've all believed in? And we all have smart cities as a part of what we do. To all of our companies, we have about 48 companies enlisted in an accelerator partner program in which we're trying to empower them to step up and take leadership on how their companies become smart, not in their business and how they do their business. We're not experts in that. But how do they become smart and thinking about how their workforces get around in our community? Well, hopefully that is continuing long beyond this grant, and that this is a jumping off point, and that this has a life of its own long before us, and we don't need to be sitting here pounding the drum. I do hope that Smart Cities becomes a mantra and becomes in our DNA. It's like a muscle that we all develop in our community. It's something we all do. But I don't know physically what that organizational structure looks like, but I hope it's a wide movement that we're all living.
I would challenge, so I've been in the public sector now longer than I've been in private, and the day I realized that, I thought, oh boy, am I all of a sudden a bureaucrat? And what I'd like what I'd like to share is that I'd like to challenge all of us who are in academia or government or in public service, is that the takeaway in 5 or 6 years from now is that this is the norm. Looking at it from my organization in particular, I was telling someone earlier about a new process that we're going to engage in with digital payment, and they said, oh, is that part of the Smart Cities program, part of the grant? And I said, no. As a matter of fact, that's something that we realize is a gap in delivery of service to our customers and to our residents. So it's the norm, and we made a huge system redesign, citywide system redesign last year, first time in 40 years. And I've been talking to the team about we should be so agile and so nimble in using the information that's coming back to us that we can tweak it as we go and be doing our system redesign on a whatever, daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. We can't wait 40 more years. So I think whether it's 2 years out, 5 or 10, I would challenge that it needs to fundamentally alter how we think about delivery of service to citizens and residents.
Yeah, I'd agree. If we are going to change systems and the structures that have been inequitable in the past, this kind of way of working has to continue. It has to become the norm, and we welcome it.
And just to chime in, and that was a great point, both of you, we think of it at the university as smart citizens. So we produce two things at a university, talent and knowledge, invention, right? So we have 66,000 students here at this university. 11,000 are coming in the doors here in August. They are either going to be the next round of smart innovators, right? The creators of the technology and the analytics and the research that's being implemented in our cities, or they're just going to be smart citizens. They're going to be users of it. So to Joanna's point from a moment ago, when does smart, which we really defined as leveraging technology and data to better the quality of life, just become good practice? It's no longer smart, it's just what we do. And how are we really preparing from a university side all of our students, not just the students in engineering or the students who are engaging in this work, right, the smart technology work, but all students to be good citizens in that new world?
Well, I'm going to start with the first audience question, but I want to remind folks the number is 614-984-8001, or you can use the hashtag to get the question. I'm actually going to pitch the question to Erica, and I'm going to add to the question, because the question is just what are some tips for cultivating these types of partnerships in other communities. But I want you to explain it, Erica, through the lens of not a Smart Columbus, but through the Reeb Avenue Center, something that, and actually give them the background on the Reeb too as well.
Okay, wow, that's loaded. All right. I'm trying to remember it all, Shannon. So first and foremost, when we're talking about doing this work in other communities, and I get this question a lot, engaging community in a significant way where they are partners in the city's prosperity is key. Much like the mantra you heard from Pittsburgh, we hear it all the time now across the country in small communities, nothing for us without us. If we are trying to build a sustainable system change, you need to involve the end user in this case, but the residents. And so organizing at the community level to better neighborhoods and quality of life is essential. So on the Reeb Avenue project that Shannon is referencing, about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, we embarked on something called the Southern Gateway Revitalization, which is on the south side of Columbus along Parsons Avenue. And quite frankly, it took all of us. It took community, it took private sector, public sector. Everyone had to come to the table. And we said, this area is suffering, but it could be so much more on every measure. Low graduation rates, food deserts, unemployment, high infant mortality, high crime rates, high arson rates, you name it. And it was really close to the city center. It was right, as a matter of fact, right down the street from a leading hospital, the Nationwide Children's Hospital, at the time of their really pivotal expansion. And so we were about to have an imbalance, an additional imbalance. This huge and wonderful partner doing the right thing for folks was about to build this mega campus while you had people suffering just blocks away. And we said, okay, we're going to come together and figure out what we should do next. It wasn't City Hall saying this is what we were going to do next. It was what should we do next? And so residents worked together. We convened folks for 2 years. And what ended up happening was just phenomenal. One of the first things we got from a local developer, small residential developer, he said, there's an abandoned school in our neighborhoods because the local school system had to close it. He said, there's an abandoned school in this neighborhood, and it is a sign of despair. How can we use this to achieve the goals the community wants? And we took this 68,000 square foot building that was abandoned for 5 years. And our philanthropic partners came to the table, our local government came to the table and said, okay, we got 68,000 square feet to repurpose right here in the community. What will we do? The community stepped up and said, we want GED classes and some kind of workforce pathway, because enough of us, we don't have the skills or the assets to get the new types of jobs. So we put a job center there, and we put a child care center there. And not only a one-shift child care center, they wanted a two-shift child care center, because most folks in that neighborhood worked 2 jobs, and they needed child care through 11 o'clock at night. So we worked with partners, it had not been done in that side of town, and said, how can we do this? Not only that, we put a food pantry down there, a restaurant operated by Mid-Ohio Food Bank. There's a Boys and Girls Club in the space. There's an event space. It's a fantastic model of collaboration. But what it did was it also built confidence in the neighborhood. There's been new housing, market rate housing, affordable housing, new investment in the infrastructure along Parsons Avenue for transportation, and this community has just rallied back in ways that no one expected. And so, you know, that's a takeaway for us. And I think that was part of the reason why they asked me to be a part of the Infant Mortality Reduction Initiative, because you gotta lead by building the infrastructure in communities to be able to field any project that comes down the pike, be it smart cities, be it neighborhood revitalization through housing, be it a workforce development program, a public health program, you name it. What it's done is it has built an infrastructure where all kinds of things can take off and grow.
A second question that's just come in is, as a first-time visitor, I see a growing city, and that's exciting, but it also seems to be a gentrifying in predictable ways, benefiting white-collar and white people, while I'm reading. While High Street has homeless people of color, what social issues are arising from our success, and how does that tide rise for all boats? That's for any of us.
I think that's not only Mayor Ginther's, but the city council as a whole biggest concern is we've had a lot of success in this community, but there's a population that's being left behind. And that's when we talk about a smart city being one that provides equitable access to opportunity for all, that's really important. Let's not, the technology disruption that's occurring and the change that's happening, let's not make sure let's stop from creating a larger disparity between economic groups. Let's build a middle class in that. And so I don't know if we have all the answers on that, but that's a real concern, and that's a focus. So we talk at the city, we talk a lot about a priority of the neighborhoods and investing in the neighborhoods for everybody, not for gentrification, not for new residents, but for everyone, and have communities that are built. I'll start with that. I think you can help answer it. I think everyone on this panel can add to that.
Well, now I feel like a bit of a panelist, because this is kind of where the elected leadership comes in. You know, a part of this, our application had to do with Linden, a community that has been historically distressed, a community that has little trust in systems and institutions to actually solve problems for communities. And then you start talking about it really exciting. Again, we did really good marketing at the beginning of this, and they start hearing numbers like $50 million. And then it, snowballed to $500 million. And the question starts to become, well, where does that money going, and how is that benefiting my neighborhood? When I was chair of the committee on council that oversaw smart cities, and still to this day, I asked Mike Stevens, or I say this antidote, somebody in Linden has to know somebody that got a job out of smart cities. There has to be able to be a conversation that somebody's grandmother says, yeah, it wasn't my grandson, but so-and-so's boy got a job and is working and were trained, went through some type of program, initiated, participated through smart cities. And if that is not the case, if we're not having those conversations out there, I will consider it a failure on my part, because we as elected leaders went out there and told folks that this would be a program, an initiative that they would be able to fill in the long run.
That's a lot of what we talk a lot about from the business community. Nothing changes a life more than when you have a stable job. And transportation has a lot to do with that and being able to have a reliable way to get to work. And we're so grateful for Joanna's leadership at CODA and looking about how can we increase the access for all residents to get to opportunity, but also how does our private sector start to take responsibility for ensuring that their workforce can get to those jobs. That's something we're really in the center of and trying to bring about that conversation in a way that we can change what has not been, which has almost been a taboo conversation for decades in Columbus. And I would also say a big part of why we're doing this at all is because inevitable change and disruption to industry is happening right now. Honda of America, which is Honda R&D and Honda America Manufacturing, is headquartered in the Columbus region. As a result, we have the largest concentration of Tier 2, Tier 3 automotive manufacturing suppliers, of which a majority of those create parts for the engine, the combustion engine. Honda just announced, and we're really fortunate that they're going to be putting appropriate investments here around electrification, but 2/3 of all their models by 2030 will be a plug-in or a fully electric vehicle. A battery has 3 parts. A combustion engine has 2,000 parts. Each of those 2,000 parts have patents and a supply chain and a workforce that feeds it. Those go away when we switch to electric engines. This is not a casual, oh yeah, maybe that will happen someday. This is a very real, present reality that we're all facing, and we have to do our job to help pivot our workforce. And so we have amazing partnerships with Columbus State to provide and to bring the first ever service training on how to service a battery. We have one of the top programs for auto mechanics, and none of those programs teach anyone how to deal with a circumstance if a battery vehicle comes to their shop. And so these are real practical things that we're facing that if not for Smart Columbus, if not for this challenge, I don't think we would have the sense of urgency or the resources or the community momentum to get our work together to start to solve it. So I think that's really important.
I think, pardon me, I think the responsibility lies with us as leaders of organizations to make sure that the grant was the catalyst that changed how we think. I know I said it before, and I might sound like I'm repeating myself, but I will repeat this until I feel like every governmental agency gets it, that it is their responsibility to work at the neighborhood level, and then includes like things we've done even just in the past year. We did not make it part of the Smart Cities grant, but last year as part of our transportation system redesign, we expanded our routes so that 89% more people, 113,000 more people now have access to high frequency routes. So that's how we will help combat the issues of making it fair and equitable for all. Household transportation costs were almost 1/3 of the budget in Central Ohio. So that means you're putting money down the gas tank. So to the extent that we can affect one of those 4 major elements of a household budget, that's more disposable income to reinvest in yourselves. And we're also looking at things like Jordan mentioned. We have a shortage of skilled trades, and we could blame the school system. We could blame our elected leaders. But we, for example, at CODA just this past year, inaugurated a vehicle maintenance apprenticeship program with Columbus City Schools, and 100% of the students just graduated yesterday at CODA. I was so proud to see these 17-year-olds who have dedicated 5 hours a day for an entire year of their school system with a waiver from the Columbus City Schools, where they worked alongside of our mechanic, a mechanic who's likely to retire within the next year or two, and then what will we do when we no longer have that talent pool? So it's up to us community leaders to actually implement these practices and these policies within our individual organizations.
And that's not an entry-level wage job.
No.
Right, yeah.
No, these are very well-paying. And as a matter of fact, there's a shortage of 180,000 heavy-duty mechanics right now in the Midwest. And think about, people in neighborhoods having that skill set, which is an internship level. And next thing you know, you are making almost twice the annual household income of the state of Ohio with that one job. So I would challenge ourselves that it has to be systematic in how we implement. We can't expect one single entity to be doing it. We have to practice what we preach.
Well, thank you. I think that's about the end of today's program. So on behalf of our panel, but on behalf of all of the residents of the city of Columbus, we hope that you've had an enjoyable educational conference, that we have been able to learn from one another, and that we were hospitable and welcomed you to our great city. Thank you, and God bless.